What's up, everybody? Welcome to the State of Wild, episode 22, a regular podcast, YouTube video, web series thing. My name is Meowth. As usual, we're joined by CorbettGames. Corbett, how you doing tonight?
G'day, Meowth. I'm doing super well today. Got to take the day off streaming, work on some other stuff. But yeah, very happy to be here with you today.
Yeah, I'm excited to talk some Hearthstone. So the expansion, Darkmoon Faire, has been out for 5 days, so we have plenty to talk about. But before we get started, just a reminder to leave a like, comment, and subscribe if you guys enjoy our content. It's free. Help us out with our YouTube algorithm. It really does mean a lot. So let's go ahead and get started. Let's talk early meta impressions. So not to be too much of a Debbie Downer, but the expansion's having pretty much the exact impact that we predicted. We're hoping to be surprised, but the top decks, right? Specifically Reno Priest. I know we harp on Reno Priest every episode, it feels like, but the meta completely revolves around Reno Priest, and it completely revolves around this, the next two best decks, in my opinion, Dark Lair and Aggro Druid. And it turns out that a lot of the new cards that fit into archetypes and it buffs all those archetypes, it just turns out that they all kind of still lose to Priest. And it doesn't really help that Priest got buffed with 2, potentially 3, or maybe 4 new cards as well. So Reno Priest, just like before the expansion, top dog so far. It is really, really early. It's only been 5 days. So maybe we'll be surprised. Maybe somebody will find something kind of insane. But yeah, Corbett, do you kind of agree with that?
Yeah, I think if anything, the expansion seems to have had a bigger impact than what I thought. Where I was very low on anything that would really happen. And I think like the rise of things like Big Priest and sort of Odd DH having its new makeover has been sort of a pleasant surprise. Did I just say pleasant surprise for Big Priest?
Yeah. Go from excited to play it to pleasant surprise. Who are you? What have you done with Corbett? Ugh.
Yeah, I don't know, but at least like it did something, right? Like there's something different compared to the last expansion, I suppose. But yes, overall, I would say we're relatively dead on the money in terms of our expectations. I think the majority of players felt like this was going to happen. And yeah, like you said, Reno Priest is still, funnily enough, Reno Priest is still the top dog and is one of the biggest benefactors from the expansion. It really picked up some really sweet stuff for the Reno Priest, so that's great. Love to see that. But yeah, it is a little bit of a shame that some of these archetypes that I was super excited for playing aren't as competitive as I might like. But it's still been okay, kind of like going through and testing some stuff. And like you said, there's always a surprise. We're about a similar time range now to where things kind of went crazy in Ashes, so maybe there's a chance that things get mixed up. And as we get more data through on HS Replay, that'll also be interesting to see, if there's a real difference in perception and reality.
Yeah, I think it was like a week or 2 into Skullman's Academy is where we saw Dark Lair start taking off, right? So maybe we get some big surprise like that. I will say, like I mentioned in the last episode, I am pretty happy with the expansion, like on an individual deck basis, right? Stuff like Secret Mage, Reno Secret Mage, Secret Hunter, Odd Demon. Like, there's a bunch of these tier 2, tier 3 decks that are getting significant buffs, and they play a lot cleaner, and they feel a lot stronger to play, except for when you queue into Priest, and then you cry, right? So, yeah, like, I think top dog Reno Priest, then you've got this tier 2 of Aggro Druid, Dark Lair, maybe some Odd Paladin or Big Priest kind of moving up into that tier 2 discussion, right? But then you have all these other decks that are, like, I think really, really cool, can take games off of the tier 2, but nothing right now is really holding a candle in terms of Reno Priest. So yeah, that's early meta impressions. We're going to touch back next week, maybe the week after, and see kind of how the meta evolves, and if it does. Hopefully it does. But let's move on to talking about some cards that are impressing us the most. So these are cards that we thought were going to be strong and have come out of the gates just as strong as we expected, or stuff that we might have been underrating a little bit, and they're performing a lot better than we thought in our theory crafts and our card reviews before we actually got to play with the cards. So Corbett, you want to take us away with our first couple of cards?
Yeah, so we should talk about Barker and Lothraxion, the Odd Paladin support. Meowth and I were both very low in our preview of the set on these two cards, and while the jury's kind of still out, I think they're at least better than we both anticipated.
Yeah.
Like we're saying, the data side of things hasn't really filtered through yet. So a lot of what we're talking about is very much based on feel and what we're seeing, like from what other players are doing. So it's not an exact science, but that said, early on, it definitely feels like Lothraxion and Barker are both well deserving of slots, I think, in Odd Paladin, I would say. And, Lothraxion in particular has been very strong in Dude Paladin, which is an off-meta kind of choice we might get into later. But yeah, I think like these two cards have been a bit better than I anticipated. Barker in particular, I think, looks very much safely better than Steward, which is kind of the opposite of what I anticipated.
Yeah, I think Barker gets a lot better if you're running Lothraxion, because then the Steward kind of diminishes in value a ton. So like I thought Lothraxion was going to be good against like slow archetypes, right? That's not really something that was debated. If you have this, turn 5, turn 6, turn 7, giving your dudes Divine Shield is extremely powerful. I was worried about it against other aggressive decks, and I think what's kind of shaped out so far is that Odd Paladin's holding its own against those other aggressive decks, which kind of allows you the time to play it as a 5-mana 5/5 do nothing, and then kind of snowball from there, because now you have Divine Shields with broomsticks and stuff like that. So Lothraxion, I think, definitely we slept on it a little bit more than we should be, and then Barker for sure. I think we both were saying this card sucks compared to Steward, but because Lothraxion is good, Barker gets a ton better. And
yeah,
I've been kind of impressed with it. I'm not 100% sold on it yet, but I've been impressed.
Yeah, I think the broomstick is actually something that helps these cards a lot, particularly Lothraxion, where if you play the 5-mana 5/5 and get slightly caught going too tall and not wide enough, the broom can kind of recover a lot of that. So yeah, you can kind of get rewarded a little bit. And maybe without the broom kind of being a staple of Odd Paladin lists, it would look a little differently. But yeah, right now it does seem like Lothraxion is okay. But again, we'll see, because it's been a bit mixed in terms of the early data stuff that we've seen. So I don't know. We'll figure it out, though.
Yeah, but we brought this up first because, now you guys can tell us in the comments below that you guys were right and we were wrong.
Yes.
And then next episode, when Lothraxion is proven to be bad, we'll do the reverse. But next up, let's talk palm reading. So this is a 3-mana priest spell where you discover a spell and then reduce the cost of all the spells in your hand by 1. We thought this card was going to be really, really good in Big Priest, and it has been. It's very, very good. It's super powerful at cheating out like early Screams, early Mass Hysterias, in addition to the early Shadow Essence. It's just giving Big Priest, I think, a ton of tools. It's just a very, very strong card in Big Priest. And then kind of underestimated the value of this card in Reno Priest. This card, again, similar to its function in Big Priest, cheating out the AoE earlier is important. But also the fact that it discounts your spells and lets you combo off that much quicker and easier when it comes to Anduin when you're comboing off. Palm reading, very, 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 very good card.
So, I mean, I think the thing that a lot of players underestimated was like the discount effect on the card that you discovered, and kind of like it pairs incredibly well with these kind of 2-mana and 1-mana cards in particular, because you can play multiple like cards in the same turn in the follow-up. So like it's kind of like you're getting in the immediate following turns, it's like you're not just getting a 1-mana discount, you're getting kind of like multiple mana discounts because you're playing multiple cards, right? Yeah. Like if you after a palm reading, if you play something like Penance and Breath in the same turn, then you kind of swung the board pretty significantly. Or even like Smite on the same turn, you play palm reading, and that way you don't really lose board that much. But yeah, palm reading really good, about kind of as expected, where it's kind of really pushing the Big Priest archetype, I think, in particular.
Maybe just pushing Priest in general. I think it's just one of those cards that's, if you're not running it in your Priest decks, you better have a really damn good reason as to why you're not. Next up, let's talk Acrobatics. So this is a card that we were kind of excited about, right? The 3-mana draw 2. If you play both of them, draw 2 more. And this card, just as good, if not better than we expected. I think the reason that we're bringing this up is because Odd Demon Hunter, I feel like, has performed a lot better than we expected. This new super heavy on 1-drops. I think we're running 23 the last time I checked, 1-drops, which is kind of insane when you think about it. But Acrobatics, and then to a lesser extent Stilt Stepper, kind of make that super, effective. Like, it makes the deck good. And Odd Demon Hunter going from obscurity to a good deck means that Acrobatics is pulling its weight in a huge fashion.
Yeah, I think this is kind of indicative of the sort of approach that aggro decks are going to be taking in Wild in general, where it feels like we're going to be continually pushed towards this kind of aggro druid or now odd DH kind of curve, like in an ideal world, where they're just like super, super aggressive, like super, super board floody, very like 1-drop heavy and stuff like that. But yeah, Acro, again, the card was always seen as strong, but I was a little bit surprised at how well the build as a whole seems to be performing. Acro does make for very like feast and famine gameplay sometimes, where, you know, if you draw the Acro, it feels great. If you don't draw it, it feels kind of bad. But yeah, ODH, definitely an early surprise in the meta so far. And yeah, I'm happy that like it got revitalized a little bit and a little bit more interest in the archetype after it went basically unchanged throughout last expansion.
Yeah, and it's a really cool take, I guess, until it becomes super oppressive and annoying, then it will not be cool. But just seeing the shift to me,
new is better.
Yeah, seeing the shift to me from one expansion to the other, based off the back of like 2 cards, and it like pushing the win rate of the deck up a ton, it is really, really awesome. The next one I want to talk about is Sage. So this is the 6-mana 5/5 Secret Mage card, and we can also like bucket in Occult Conjurer and Rigged Fair Game. I think we expected the whole Secret Mage, you know, arsenal of tools that Mage got this expansion to do well, and I think they have, right? Secret Mage has done well, but I'm really impressed with these cards in Reno Secret Mage. I think Reno Secret Mage plays so well now that you don't have to play all enough for your card draw, and you can play a 6-mana 5/5 that draws you 4 cards. I feel like you know how we were making fun of people for like entertaining the idea for cutting Oleneth? I'm in the boat, like you definitely don't cut Oleneth and Secret Mage, you run both, but like I'm in the boat where like Sage is almost, I feel like, as good as Oleneth in the current builds of those 2 decks. I don't know if that's too hot of a take, but it's performed really, really well for me playing both Secret and Reno Secret.
I think there might be a world where we're meant to be cutting the Alunith. I think it might involve running double fair game, but if you're cutting Fireball, which I know is something people have tried a little bit, if you're cutting Fireball, I think the Alunith loses a lot of value when you like take out that much draw or that much burn from the deck. And I know that there's been a lot of like Aegis replayed lists. I've seen a lot of Twitter lists where people have been cutting the Alunith straight up. And I think that might actually have merit. Again, I don't know. I haven't actually bothered to play much Secret Mage myself since the expansion. But I think like if you're running double rigged game and Sage, I genuinely don't know if you need the Alunith or if you can afford to play the Alunith. So I wouldn't actually be that shocked maybe if Alunith got cut, which feels wild after we just kind of like roasted Ruffle for this. Or like not roasted, but it was kind of like, oh yeah, sure, Ruffle. Yeah, I know. We might cut Alunith, but it turns out maybe that's actually true.
It turns out Ruffle might be a pretty smart guy, huh?
Yeah, almost. It almost seems like
almost
that.
Like that.
Crazy.
I will say Sage in Reno Secret Mage has completely replaced the Oleneth, and I feel like I have not missed anything in that deck. I think we'll talk a little bit about it later, but Reno Secret Mage I feel like might, alongside Big Priest, be like the 2 decks that gained the most from this expansion. And then the last but not least, let's talk about Solar Eclipse. So this was a common card that initially, when this was revealed, I thought this was a Kiri only card. I didn't know that this was actually a collectible card. And then once I learned that, I was like, well, that's so disappointing. That sucks. And then I started playing with Solar Eclipse, and the card's kind of nutty, like on its own, when you can play like Lightning Bloom and then Solar Eclipse and then play double Roar, double Paths, double whatever. It's got some pretty insane combo potential.
Yeah. I haven't tried it in like any token druid lists. I know that you were talking about that just then with like the token Savage Roar stuff, which seems very, very strong. I don't know. I think I had this card in my most interesting list and when we did our preview, and I talked about it being a Blood Bloom-esque kind of ticking time bomb. I wouldn't be surprised if this card ends up pushing something that's very insane. But even right now, maybe it's quite good.
I was about to say maybe the bomb's already exploded, because we'll talk about the list,
maybe it already has.
It was one of the best cards in that list. Every time I was like, ooh, Solar Eclipse in my hand. All I need is this one card. We win the game, which is kind of insane. But yeah, so those are the cards that have been impressing us the most. These are the cards that we feel like have been performing the best. But we want to take a little bit of a second to talk about cards that aren't exactly living up to their hype, and why that might not be. So there's really only one card, just because it's only been 5 days. I really haven't seen a huge sample of decks, but I want to talk a little bit about Deck of Chaos. I know this is a card that both of us were super hype on. I still am a little bit hype on it, but the early returns of playing Reno Lock, it really hasn't lived up to its hype. I don't know if you feel the same way. I don't know if you've been playing a ton against Arena Locks, but have you seen Deck of Chaos?
So I haven't had the chance to play much Reno Lock myself, but judging from what other people are saying who have played a lot of Reno Lock, yeah, it does seem like Deck of Chaos isn't actually worth it, which is kind of surprising, like considering how high it was on the card heading in. A lot of people are saying it just doesn't quite have the impact that it needs. It's really not really doing that much at that stage of the game compared to something like Luna's Pocket Galaxy, where Warlock is already getting to that late game and cheating out the big demons, and the Deck of Chaos just isn't making the same kind of impact. So yeah, I'm kind of surprised a little bit, but that's what I've so far heard. Like I said, I haven't had the chance to play it much myself, but yeah.
Yeah, I've played about 20 games of Reno Lock, and like Deck of Chaos has been good, right? When I play Deck of Chaos, I'm cheating mana, but I'm not doing like the stupid degenerate things that I do in LPG Mage, right? Which is maybe why I'm a little, I don't want to say disappointed, but it just feels I feel like it might have something to do with the current builds of Reno Lock, because in LPG Mage you're running I think 6 or 7 spells and 23 minions. So you're getting a ton of value off when you hit the LPG, even if you aren't playing the LPG on 7, right? Even if you're LPGing on like 11 or 12, you still have plenty of value in your deck left. In Reno Lock, because of your hero power and because of the way that current decks are constructed, like I'm looking at lists and you're running like maybe 17 or 18 minions, right? So 5 or 6 less minions to hit with Deck of Chaos. It's less, consistent because you don't have ways like Tortola and Pilgrim to cheat it out. Plus you have your life tap, so the later it gets, the less impact you're getting on your Deck of Chaos. So I think there's a bunch of factors leading into it, but I'm not saying the card's bad. I think it's performed well. I've been performing really well with Deck of Chaos Reno Lock. It's just it itself is not having like the insane impact that I was kind of expecting, and it might be because I was kind of comparing it to Luna's Pocket Galaxy, even though it was like a strictly worse Luna's Pocket Galaxy. But I was expecting to do some dumb things, and I haven't been able to do dumb things. So, so we'll revisit these topics in about a week and see kind of how they're changing and how the meta's developing. But for our first episode of Darkmoon Faire, I felt like let's do the thing that a lot of people ask Corbett and I for. Let's talk about a lot of lists. So we're going to be sharing a lot of the lists that we've been playing or playing against in early Darkmoon Faire. And it's only fitting that we talk about, we complain about the top 3 dogs in the meta. Let's talk about the top 3 dogs in the meta. So let's talk about the new Reno Priest list and what it got from Darkmoon Faire.
Yeah, so Reno Priest had 2 major additions in Palm Reading and Insight. There has been a little bit of experimentation with 2 other cards, the Goon as the like 8/8 that draws your stuff and costs health, and then the 3 mana 2/5. I've seen a very, very small amount of that getting tested, but that was obviously, or not obviously, but that was ultimately found to be not quite good enough. But yeah, Palm Reading, Insight. They're both very, very good cards. We talked about Palm Reading earlier. Insight just kind of gives the deck a little bit more card draw, which it always wants. But yeah, Reno Priest, right now, there's a Lucia cut from this list because right now the meta has basically no combo decks. There's like a tiny smattering of Mali, it feels like, but there's very little outside that. Like no Quest Mage at all for the most part. So yeah, Lucy doesn't really make sense, I don't think, in the current meta. But yeah, Reno Priest picked up a couple cards. It's always really good for Wild. And yeah, just continues to keep crushing it week after week, day after day, month after month. I don't know, like expansion after expansion, I guess.
Yeah, we've talked enough about Priest. Let's go ahead and move on to our next sec. Let's talk about Aggro Druid. So Aggro Druid initially didn't look like it was getting a ton of tools, but you wanted to talk a little bit about Wriggling Horror, the new card from Darkmoon Faire. So 2-mana 2/1 mini Fungalmancer. So when you play it, the battle cry, it's give adjacent minions +1/+1.
Yeah, no one is playing this. Like, no one. Which, to me, is a little surprising because the card is performing incredibly well in Standard. Like, I really can't overstate that, basically. Like, it's so good in the Aggro Demon Hunter list, right there behind Voracious Reader as one of the 2 highest drawn win rate cards in that deck in Standard. And typically, when a card is really, really good in that kind of deck in Standard, it translates well to Wild. Yeah. So I think that Wriggling Horror is probably good enough for Aggro Druid in Wild, despite the fact that no one's really bothering to do that change. Like the bottom cards in Aggro Druid, we've talked about this a lot. They're very weak, like the Beaming Sidekick, Weblord, and kind of Initiate slots. So you don't actually have to clear like that high of a benchmark to kind of get into the deck. So yeah, I think this is something that a lot of people should try, and I think I anticipate that this will become the staple like of the deck. I think within a month or two, this will just be seen as a core card.
Yeah, I think my initial hesitation to Wriggling Horror was that it was 2 mana, and so then it becomes 3 mana when you have Embiggened, and so it can be a little bit awkward to play. But I guess if you're cutting the Web Lords, which were already 2 mana anyways, I think Wriggling Horror has a better immediate impact. I think the only reason you were running Web Lords were for anti-Reno decks. And maybe you get around that by playing Wriggling Horror because that puts you out of AoE range, right? So maybe you're trading off one for the same thing.
Yeah, Weblord was also like incredibly good against Quest Mage, and that was part of the appeal because it turned that from a very like a favorable to just a crushing matchup. And there's no Quest Mage anymore, so.
And last but not least, let's talk Dark Glare. So if you might be wondering, there are no new cards. Why are you talking about Dark Glare? Well, it's still a very, very good deck, even with no new cards. That's kind of what we do in Wild. I know there was a little bit of experimentation with Revenant Rascal. I know I saw Jack trying it a little bit. I think ultimately people are like, maybe not worth it, the fact that it's 3 mana. But moving forward, I think it's still something to keep an eye on, potentially. But yeah, same 30 cards for Dark Glare. Still very same deck that does dumb things with Giants and Dark Glare. Yeah.
Nothing to add. I mean, it's Dark Glare Warlock. Dark Glare Warlock, it's really good. I still have the theory that it's a little bit overrated because of when it high rolls, it's so degenerate and disgusting. But I think it's just one of those decks where it probably loses a little bit more than people get credit for. So I'm not like, I don't put it in the same kind of Reno Priest territory. I think it's a lot.
Well, I think Reno Priest
like,
is on
gap there.
I think Reno Priest is on its own little pedestal, and then this is like a clump of tier 2 decks with Paladin and Priest, or Odd Paladin, Priest, and Aggro Druid, kind of that clump, you know. But I still think it's a very, very good deck. But yeah, so those are our top 3 dogs, I think. I call them the top 3 dogs because they were the top 3 prior to the expansion. We've talked a little bit about Paladin and Big Priest, and we'll talk about that because now we're going to be talking about decks that are interesting. So these are decks that have gotten major facelifts or major kind of revamps, or at least using a couple new cards, but aren't potentially seeing a ton of play because they are not like tier 1. They're in that tier 2, tier 3 category. We're going to go through the classes in alphabetical order. So let's talk about this new Odd Demon Hunter that runs 23 1-drops. Corbett, you want to take this one away?
Well, this version runs 22 because we've got the Leroy added with the Baku.
Wait, where did I hear 23 from? Were you initially running
23? That was before the Leroy got thrown back in there. But yes, Odd Demon Hunter. It's the new build, the new hottest thing, I think. It's actually one of the most popular decks right now at like higher legend. That might change obviously because I don't think it's one of the absolute best decks in the format, but you know, there's a lot of interest in it right now. With its new look. So the deck has a ton of burn. It basically never fails to curve out. It's kind of funny when you're doing your mulligan and you're faced with the decision of like, oh, do I keep these 4 1-drops or do I toss them all to get 4 more 1-drops? So it's kind of crazy how it kind of just floods for like fights for board incredibly well because you always are just vomiting stats. So you can actually do pretty well against things like Odd Pally because 1/1s lose to 1/2s, right? Like you're just putting out more stats than what your opponent can do, generally sometimes with their hero power. Like, and then, like in general, I think this deck actually does pretty okay into like Big Priest. The consume magic is kind of scary as the Big Priest because you can never really feel safe getting that taunt down. And the amount of burn this deck has is actually just disgusting. Yeah. So yeah, I like this approach a lot. I think it's good. I like the Leroy being back in the list because I think you do need that little bit of extra burn. But yeah, I've really liked it so far.
I think the big plus for this is it beats up on Odd Paladin. Stuff like this and stuff like Aggro Druid, where you can just vomit onto board faster than the Odd Paladin. Odd Paladin runs very, very few comeback mechanisms outside of Broomstick. And if you're killing them before they, get that Broomstick comeback on turn 4, then yay, right? What are your opinions on this matchup into stuff like Priest? Is it just like Reno Priest? Is it just
into Reno Priest? You're gonna have a rough time. Yeah. You're gonna have
just leave it at
Priest,
that.
I think.
Yeah.
yeah.
All right. So next up, I want to talk a little bit about Token Druid. So we kind of alluded to this earlier when we were talking about Solar Eclipse, but this is a list that I believe I found from a Chinese source. So it's something that they were running over there, and I played it, and the deck is kind of really dumb. So this is one of those where against slow decks like Priest and Mage, you can basically draw a ton of cards, and then you play Whispering Woods and Glowfly Swarms, and then you can either play Soul of the Forest to kind of protect your board from AoE, or you can Solar Eclipse Savage War them. And Eclipse Savage War, I had an instance where I was able to deal over 60 damage, by the way, in a single. I didn't need the 60, but I could have done 60.
Yeah, you could have, and that's an important part.
That's the important thing. I could have asserted my dominance, traded some minions off. But this deck, because it's 30 spells, draws a ton, right? Because guess the Weight, Rising Winds, and Fungal Fortunes draw they draw a ton. And then you just set up your it's a combo deck. It's very similar to me. Like, it's not an aggressive deck. It's not a mid-rangey deck. It's very similar to Darklair, where like you stall, and then you have these big explosive turns that if the opponent can answer, then you probably lose. But if they can't answer, you're winning the next turn. You know, it's kind of one of those decks. But I played this today. I went 9-2, or 7-2 rather, in 9 games. And I had a lot of fun playing it.
I like this build a lot in general, or like the Token Druid archetype in general. I think it's something that I was trying to push back when which expansion was before Ashes?
Descent of Dragons.
Yeah, that one. Yeah. I've been pushing this kind of list for a while, but I like this one. I haven't tried it for a long time. So Solar Eclipse into Savage Roar or Solar Eclipse into Branching Paths does seem really filthy. And I think it could be fun to play. I might actually give this a shot.
Yeah, like the nice little thing with Solar Eclipse and Branching Paths is normally when you Solar Eclipse to choose one spell, it chooses like randomly. But because Branching Paths is not a choose one spell, you get to choose both the second time you cast. So you can either gain 24 armor, which has been useful against Secret Mage, or you can, double Savage War for 6, which is pretty sick. I think the one thing that I'm interested in messing around with is like cut the bio projects for innervates. But even then, like the biology projects did work in a few games. But yeah, Token Druid, it's actually a lot of fun. I think one of the decks that kind of went under the radar when we were doing a lot of theory crafting. I didn't see anybody talking about Solar Eclipse or anything like that in like this aggro Token Druid. And so I was a pleasant surprise to play.
Is it wrong that I look at this list and I think about Barnes Yashaj?
Please don't. It makes fungal fortunes bad. Don't do that.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
Don't ruin such a beautiful deck with the ugliness of Barnes Yashaj. Come on.
Okay, sorry. I couldn't help it.
Okay, and then the next deck I want to talk about is Beast Hunter. So this is kind of a list that was taken from somebody in my chat. His name's Hectic. He's been climbing any ladder or legend ladder with this. So this deck, basically, we're looking at a couple new cards. Don't Feed the Animals and Dancing Cobra. And then kind of the big all-star addition to this deck is the Trampling Rhino. I think the Trampling Rhino gives you the top end that this deck was kind of missing. Giving you the ability to do damage immediately when it comes out on board, even if you don't have the Tundra Rhino. Don't Feed the Animals has actually been surprisingly good and easy to upgrade. It's one of those where against other aggressive decks, you don't want this card in your hand because you want to fight for board early, but against stuff like Priest and slower Warlock decks, you can kind of assemble a bunch of resources, play like a Desert Spear or Diving Griffin to draw cards, and then hand buff twice, and then turn 5, turn 6, you're playing Tundra Rhino, and then 5/5 Wolpertingers and hitting people in the face for 15 damage immediately with scary follow-up. But this deck, I think, performed really, really well. The Dancing Cobra was actually the weak card for me. I felt like I kind of wanted a Dire Mole instead, just to make the Razormaw consistency a little bit cleaner. But the Corrupted Poison was actually really nice against stuff like Spreading Plague and Void Lords. So there's a little bit of give and take there. But in general, I think this list plays really, really smoothly, plays really clean. And it's been nice to have an aggressive Hunter deck back, at least performing well against everything that's not Reno Priest. So, all right, and then another Hunter deck I want to talk about. We're running Secret Hunter, so this is kind of the one that a lot of people were excited to try with Petting Zoo and Mystery Winter. Mystery Winter and Petting Zoo have been just as strong as advertised. So this list, Animated Broomsticks and Winners and Tour Guides all synergize really, really nicely with your Face Stalker, Dragonbane, Secret Passage, Secret Package. Imagine Secret Passage in Hunter. Yikes. So the Secret Package, God, now I'm saying Passage all over, you definitely change the composition of the secrets depending on what you're playing against in your local meta. So feel free to swap it up to like double explosive or double freezing, whatever you need. For me, I know you're running kill commands over inconspicuous riders. To me, I've liked the inconspicuous riders just thinning my deck, so that I'm more likely to find Petting Zoos, Dragonbanes. I will say Broomsticks I feel like have been the weakest. You could definitely cut them for Secret Keepers, just because when you're doing Petting Zoo for 9/9s and 12/12s on turn 3, turn 4, doesn't really matter if they have Rush. And so you can definitely run it, the Secret Keeper in place just to be a little bit more aggressive. But yeah, I mean, Secret Hunter, again, is another one of those decks it's struggled into Priest in my experience. You know, I play about 10-15 games with a lot of the lists that I play. And if you take away the losses to Reno Priest, the deck performs pretty well. So just another deck to keep an eye on. It's aggressive enough, I think, in my opinion, to beat stuff like Warlocks, Dark Layers, and Cubes and stuff like that. But it's going to struggle like all Hunter decks do against Reno.
Oh, it's interesting you said the Void Lord comment. Because Secret Hunter has definitely struggled a lot into kind of like the Void Caller decks for a long time. But do you think this now with like Petting Zoo can vomit enough stats to make it a contest at least?
Well, it's one of those decks where like, if you can play like Cloaked Huntress on 3 and then a bunch of face like what are the things from the Petting Zoo? They're Striders, right? And you play and get 3 or 4 Striders. And then they play Void Caller on 4, you're generally able to push enough damage. I feel like if you're queuing into a lot of Warlocks, you probably are going to want kill commands in here like you run. But like in the meta that I was playing against, right, it's a lot of aggro druids, priest, rogues, stuff like that. There was a lot of Galakrond warriors when I played this on day 1. I didn't really feel like I needed them, so they perform pretty well. But yeah, it loses to Reno on 6 and 7, right? Like most of these Hunter decks do, and I don't really know if there's a fix for that other than hoping they don't have it, but it felt smooth. Like Petting Zoo, better than advertised in my opinion. Petting Zoo is insane. It's way better than Spellstone. And then
better than advertised.
Way better than advertised. I know we were high on it, but like I think in my opinion, with everything else that classes have gotten, Petting Zoo is like the reason this deck works. That and Mad Scientist and Cloak Huntress, like it's up there for like one of the best cards in this deck.
Okay, let's just keep it going with the secret theme. So Secret Mage. We kind of knew Secret Mage was going to get a lot, and it did. And a lot of those cards have looked very good. The Occult Conjurer, the Sag, and Rigged Fair Game have kind of all like found their way into the deck. It's still kind of tough fitting in everything, but yeah, I think like Secret Mage is a deck that I've seen a bit more of. It's typically a deck that players at high ranks are very, very like unwilling to play. They tend to shy away from it a lot. So I think that at lower ranks, I wouldn't be surprised if this was a far more popular option, alongside things like Odd Paladin. But yeah, Secret Mage, I'm sure it's good. I haven't really had the chance to play it myself too much. Again, expansion's only been out for like 5 days. You only get so many hours each day to play Hearthstone. But yeah, what are your impressions so far of Secret Mage, Meow?
I mean, Secret Mage, like the Occult Conjurer, shores up the 4-drop slot just like we thought. Its 4-mana 8/8s are pretty good, by the way. Rigged Fair Game and Sag, whatever you want to call it, like we talked about earlier. I'm actually curious. I might go in and try to play some Secret Mage without Alanath and run double Fair Game and Sage and see how it feels. I'm pretty sure like Alanath is still like crucial, but I mean you'll never know until you experiment. But I think in general Secret Mage is a very, very good deck. Like it itself is gonna help keep stuff like Key Block and Dark Layer in check. It's one of those decks that like if Odd Paladin's super popular, if Aggro Druid's super popular, it's probably going to struggle, right? If Reno Priest is super popular, and it might fall out of the metagame. But if Dark Layer Warlock, Keep Warlock kind of make a comeback, Secret Mage is just one of those decks that'll never go away, and I think it's a very, very strong deck. But yeah, so let's talk about a Reno version of Secret Mage. So this is kind of the deck that Corbett and I were talking about a lot prior to the expansion, as probably the deck that's getting more than Secret Mage. So Reno Secret, I think, is getting 5 new cards. It's running the Game Master. It's running the new Secret Rigged Fair Game. It's running Inconspicuous Rider. It's running Occult Conjurers, and it's running Sage. Sage replacing the Alanath, and then you're getting 4 very, very strong cards in this deck. I'm actually sitting here and I'm like, there are more cards now that I kind of want to fit in this deck. Like Wand Thief might want to go in this deck as well, and I just don't know what to cut because you have that many good cards, which is a good sign.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Like you can't. Normally you're just like, I need another card. Let me just shove Loatheb in here. You don't really have space for that in this list, right? You can't just like shove a Loatheb in this deck. Even if maybe it should be in here. But I think this deck, I played it a ton. It feels really, really good. Like if you're queuing into Odd Paladins, you're queuing into aggro druids and you're tired of it and you want to beat them up, play Reno Priest or play this list. I think this list is very, very good against aggro. Very, very strong. And has game against a lot of decks. You lose a little bit against Reno Priest and Reno Locks, but you make up for it with very, 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 very strong matchups against other aggressive decks.
Yeah, I think I'm going to give this a shot pretty soon. Again, it's another one of the decks that I haven't personally touched very much. I did anticipate that the Reno version would be better than the normal Secret version.
It has felt like it.
I'm not sure. It has felt like that so far?
Yeah, because I've been at a much lower rank than you are because I've been playing some memes, but there's plenty of aggro, right? Still running around all over Legend Ladder, and so this deck, for me, it's aggro and Priest, and this performs a lot better than normal Secret Mage in those matchups, and so it feels really strong.
Nice. Next up, we have Odd Paladin. So we touched on Odd Paladin earlier, right? We were talking about Lothraxian and Barker. Again, nothing really definitive yet about the like exact way to build this. Like we don't have definitive answers on that stuff. But right now, we probably suggest playing Barker and Lothraxian in Odd Pally. The other card that the Odd Paladin has picked up is Oh My Yogg, and oh my god, this card is strong, man. This is like a one-mana counterspell. It feels like every other time. This is disgusting. I hate this, but kind of also like it when I'm playing the deck.
Yeah, I think my favorite part of Oh My Yogg so far is having 3-mana spells, and they cast Surrender to Madness instead, and you're just like, shit. Having your Dark Skies Oh My Yogg into a Surrender to Madness just feels.
It's really that, and then when they have to cast the coin and they cast a forbidden spell, it hurts. Like that's the disgusting part. But yes, Odd Paladin really, I think it was already like a pretty damn good deck, and I had some minor upgrades here. So I don't know. I think it's one
I
of the
wouldn't
best
even say
decks in the
minor.
format right now.
Lothraxian, I think. I severely underestimated. I think it's very, very good. So.
Yeah. So one of the better decks in the format. I think one of the real contenders right behind the very top tier. But yeah, Odd Pally, definitely a good option. I think like Rallying Blade, it's included in this list. I think it makes a lot more sense now with the Lothraxian and kind of like lowering the curve with double Divine Favor. I personally think like double Rallying Blade could give the deck a lot of burst, like in that turn 6 to 7 to 8 kind of area. In addition to just being like a fine card in some like slower matchups in general.
Yeah, so I guess, would you ever consider, is there ever a world or a metagame where you cut the Divine Favors for, like, let's say, double Blessing of Authorities or Viscous Corruptors, putting them back in the list? Yeah. Would you assume, like, if Odd Paladin Mirrors got super popular, for example?
Yeah, it's just a matter of, like, the curve and stuff. Like if you're cutting the one favor, it's probably because you want to be running another 5-drop or so. Yeah. Obviously, like, the more 5s you run, the higher the curve, the worse Divine Favor becomes. So, to me, it's actually a little bit less about the meta and a bit more about the build, if that makes sense. Like, I think that, whether you run 1 or 2 favors is more about what other cards you're running. Like, are we running double Rallying or are we running like double Blessing of Authority? Those kind of decisions. And yeah, but we'll see how it pans out, what the list is.
But yeah, Odd Paladin's been one of the 5 best decks, I feel like, for 2.5 years, and nothing's changing. Still a very, very good deck, and it got a lot better this expansion. But let's talk about slightly worse Odd Paladin, but also much, much better because it's cool and hipster. Let's talk about Corbett's, just dude Paladin, mid-range dude Paladin.
Damn, dude. I love my dude Paladin. It's so fun, actually. Like, I love this. I adored dude Paladin when it was standard. Back in the olden days, when we were playing this with our 2-mana equality, man. I miss it. But yes, Dude Paladin got some massive upgrades in the set. Lothraxian, it's even better in Dude Paladin than Odd, I think. Because you do like have a lot more reason to play cards like Standing Its Darkness or Day at the Fair.
Yeah.
Cards that aren't very good in Odd Paladin, but are really good, obviously, in Dude Paladin. And Lothraxian kind of makes those really, really strong. The Balloon Merchant is another 4-mana Divine Shield kind of giver to all your Silverhand recruits. It's another really strong card. And so, yeah, Dude Paladins felt very satisfying to play, I think. It definitely feels like it's come together a lot as an archetype, like a lot more cohesive. And yeah, I've just really enjoyed it so far. I think it's been fun.
Yeah, I played a little bit of this today on my stream. It's definitely worse than Odd Paladin. Don't get us wrong. It's definitely worse than Odd Paladin. But it was a ton of fun grinding people out with like Stand Against Darknesses and then Days of the Fair and then a Taram. Like, oh my god, I never knew how much I would miss playing Sunkeeper Taram. Like,
yeah,
back 2.5 years ago, 3 years ago, when Dude Paladin was like super dominant everywhere, I hated that card. Absolutely hated it. And I like miss it. I don't know what's wrong with me, but it's been a ton of fun to play. I'm gonna be messing around with some like pure versions of Paladin, right? Like pure secrets and maybe like a pure dudes version, as well, just for the heck of it. But like you said, it's been a ton of fun to play, even if it's just like going down memory lane a little bit.
Next up, let's talk about Big Priest, everybody's favorite archetype. Big Priest got, we talked about this earlier. It got some massive upgrades with the palm reading and Blood of Gahoon. But yeah, Big Priest, massive comeback where it's now one of the most popular decks, I think, at higher ranks, and I'm assuming the rest of ladder. I'm sure everybody's playing Big Priest. People have historically loved it, so it makes a lot of sense. But yes, Big Priest hitting the Blood of Gahoon is really.
It's so much better than your charge, dude. It's so much better.
It's so good. It's just like, I don't know where to start. Whether it's like with the big payoff card that like synergizes perfectly like that, or do we start with the palm reading, which like cheats out all your extra stuff like a turn early? It's really disgusting. Something that I will say with this particular list is it's pretty stock in terms of their removal. We're running, the usuals like smites and penance and the AoE from Lash and Breath, all that kind of usual stuff. Something that's a little bit different is the double Mass Resurrect. I think that Mass Resurrect becomes a lot better with palm reading, because there's a big difference between waiting till turn 9 for a Mass Res and casting it for like 7 mana, obviously. So I think Mass Res is sort of the flex spot right now. I know that some people have cut one Mass Res from the list that we have up here in favor of a Sphere of Sapience. So that could be something that people should try. But yeah, Big Priest, definitely like a big winner, I guess. So I've been impressed, and I've actually enjoyed playing it. Now, talk to me in 3 weeks. Am I going to say that? We'll revisit that then. But yeah, what do you think about Big Priest so far, Mia?
First of all, I've already started seeing the tweets on Twitter or the complaints on Reddit about Big Priest. So I know it's everywhere online.
Deserved, obviously.
I think the biggest thing for me is the Scrapyard Colossus and Blood of Gahoon make it so much harder to actually like kill him as an aggro deck, which is kind of insane. I think the Blood of Gahoon hitting, copies of cards in your deck rather than actually pulling them like you charge is also like a super big deal. Because it gives you a little bit more resiliency to like polymorph effects, right? You have multiple copies to potentially to come back.
Yeah.
I think the biggest thing here is you're not running Screams, like, and you can get away with that because you're running huge walls of taunts, right? So after you start cheating them out, you don't really need or want to Scream, right?
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that, because to me it seems like a very natural decision. But I know that a lot of people are going to be like, no, Psychic Scream. What the hell are you talking about?
Psychic Scream's the most busted card in Priest. What are you doing?
Yeah, exactly. And I think that Psychic Scream is like one of the best cards in Priest, right? Like it is one of the best cards in Reno Priest. But I think in this particular list, it doesn't actually make that much sense, because by the time you're looking to cast Psychic Scream, you're kind of already trying to like cheat out your minions with Spellstones and Essence and really like vomiting out threats like that. And also Psychic Scream now just doesn't do that much into the types of decks that you need to be hitting. Like you need to be fighting against like Aggro Druid and Odd Paladin and stuff. And Psychic Scream is okay against them if you can afford to like hold out till that point. But you should never be relying on a Psychic Scream, right? Like Reno Priest can get away with it because they have a billion other really excellent AoE and they have the Highlander cards in general. But this deck, I just don't think it actually wants it, because it's constantly trying to like vomit out the board instead. And yeah, I like the Psychic Scream cut, and it's something that a lot of players have been doing, and it has taken off. So I think this deck is actually very refined and is already kind of filtered out. So I don't know if there's much more to really discuss, maybe except like Barnes, whether people play Barnes or not. But yeah.
I don't know if many people still have Barnes after they disenchanted him when they got initially. So I guess that's another question.
That's a good point. I hadn't considered that.
But yeah, so let's move on to our next deck. So we're gonna go from Big Priest to Aggro Odd Shaman. So this is the deck that I built just to play the new cards, right? I just wanted to play. I opened Inara and I wanted to play her, and so I play her in Stormstrike. And Odd Shaman for the past couple expansions has kind of served as kind of what Aggro Shaman has turned into, right? It used to be super burn oriented, burn focused. And so what I've done is I took that shell that was popularized by Blue Train and Anura, and kind of took out the Molten Blast and that kind of top end, Molten Blast, Bloodlust, and stuff like that. And I'm replacing them with Anara, Doomhammers, and Stormstrikes. Anara and Stormstrikes synergize so insanely well with the Doomhammer. It's like you equip Doomhammer on turn 4, turn 5, and then you have just enough mana to play a Stormstrike and like hit him for a Pyroblast on turn 6 or turn 5, which is kind of insane.
Yeah.
And then of course you have like all the good like Odd Shaman cards, right? You have the Tunnel Trogs, you have the Arcane Watchers, you have Electra. The amount of games that I won with just Electra, like Tunnel Trog on 1, Totem on 2, Electra and Storm's Wrath on 3, like, and it makes the board like a 5/5s. Like that's insane. I don't know. I had a lot of success with this list and a lot of fun playing it because nobody expects Odd Shaman. Every time you queue into a game and they see the Baku Hero Power, even after all this time, you always get the amazing or the wow. So
yeah,
if that's not a reason to play it alone, I don't know what is.
Yeah, that immediate reaction is like a huge selling point to me. I don't know. This deck looks kind of fun. I haven't really dabbled with Odd Shaman too much. Really since like it had that first like week or two when it was like, oh my god, Odd Shaman's real, guys. I played it a little bit then, but it's been a while. But yeah, I love Stormstrike in this list a lot. Like it looks like it can do a hell of a lot of work, I think.
Yeah, it completely like on its own is a very underwhelming card. It's like a slightly worse Serpent Shrine Portal or a worse Flanking Strike. But when you combine it in terms of Doomhammer, and I think the fact that if you like coin Doomhammer on turn 4, the fact that you have just enough mana to Stormstrike as well, like it's so fitting, it's so beautiful. I think the worst card on this list is Gidra by far because you're running a lot less spells, so it's a lot more difficult to abuse the Gidra. So definitely, like if you don't have it, don't feel like you have to craft it. But Inara, Stormstrike, Doomhammer, this package is just a ton of fun to play. I messed around with a little bit with like a normal, not odd Aggro Shaman running the same package because you get Totem Golems, you get Rock Biters, and it performed actually a lot worse than this version did. It might have been, so like I played about 10-12 games with this deck, and I played about 5 with the pure aggro version. It might have just been a little bit of variance, but it just like it felt a lot worse. Just because you're not getting I think to me the fact that you're not getting like consistent spell damage like you do with Odd Shaman, like that's actually so key to a lot of what this deck wants to do, which is kind of insane to think about. But in general, I had a lot of fun playing this deck, and if you guys are looking for a fun deck to take to ladder, this is definitely one that I recommend. And then we're almost done. Got 2 decks left, guys. I just wanted to bring up Reno Lock. So this is Reno Lock with just 1 new card. It's running the Deck of Chaos. And it's running the N'Zoth package because a lot of the N'Zoth minions synergize really, really nicely with the Deck of Chaos. So 5-mana N'Zoths and all that kind of good stuff. I'm running a little bit greedy because that's what I do. I'm running a Barista. I know a lot of people are running like Fellbolts or Tour Guides instead of the Barista. So that's kind of like my 1 card difference, I think, than most others. But I'm me, and I like Barista, and it works really nicely with Deck of Chaos, so that's what I do. But yeah, I mean, I think this is the updated Reno Lock list. If you want to play Reno Lock, I think Deck of Chaos is still good in that deck. And so feel free to net deck this one. You might be noticing no Takatis, but I think the card's garbage in normal Reno Lock list. I think if you want to run that card in Wild, you got to be running like a dedicated version of that deck. You can't be shoving it in a deck with Voidcaller or Willow. You're gonna lose games when you pull it, and not the Void Lord. So you have Gnome does the same thing, and it's not terrible. So but yeah, that's my Reno Lock list. Kind of stock outside of the 1 Barista, but yeah. And last but not least, this is the Galakrond Warrior list. This is kind of the one that I was the most excited to try because it got a ton of new cards. And let's just talk, like it's a good deck. It got a lot better. I think it plays. It plays a lot more powerfully than the old Galakrond Warrior list do, in my opinion. the ones that were like very piratey focused in the early game. Stage Dive, very, very strong. I think Ringmaster's Baton.
Oh wow, yeah, that weapon, man,
dude,
it's so good.
I thought people were calling me crazy for calling that card good. So many stats. It's so good. I think Tent Trasher by itself is like it's an okay card. It's a good card. But the fact that it enables you to run Alex Trez's champion makes it completely worth running because Alex Trez's champion's insane, in my opinion. And I think the iffy cards in this list are the Watley. Like, I don't think Watley's that good, but he gives you card draw. And then Polkelt. I think Polkelt in Galakron Warrior list is a little bit bait sometimes because I feel like a lot of people will just like tempo him on 4. And when you tempo him on 4, it doesn't feel that strong in Galakron Warrior. But because Galakron itself is so powerful in this style of deck, that's like potentially why like you want to run Polkelt, but I could totally see cutting that for like the second stage dive as well.
Yeah, the meta isn't super favorable right now, I don't think, for this deck, but I think like you're not wrong when you're talking about the powerful things that it can do. Like the Baton, as we're talking about, is so busted. There was a really funny comment when I was playing something very similar to this, where someone in my Twitch chat said, "Man, this deck would have dominated in 2018." And I'm like, yeah, that's true. Like the amount of stats that you can just vomit out, and like these insane board swings that you can make, it is kind of crazy. Like with the Baton. But again, this is wild right now. Mid-rangey decks, this is where they come to die a little bit. So I don't know. The deck does feel smooth right now. It does feel a lot cleaner and kind of more synergistic, which is always nice. I probably won't be going back to it too much, but I think that it has really nice foundation. And if you do want to play Galakron Warrior, then I think the Menagerie approach is a really good take.
Yeah, I think Galakron Warrior is like kind of stuck in between like two shells right now. It's like this Menagerie Baton kind of style of deck, or like the bomb-centric focused Galakron Warrior list. So I guess like depends on what you're seeing in your metagame, for sure. But again, this was the deck that I was kind of the most excited because it got a ton of new cards. And I think all the new cards have at least performed well, in my opinion, which is exciting. I still think it's like a tier 2, tier 3 deck because it's not tier 1 like the Chinese meta reports always like to say it is. But I think it's a lot. I enjoy playing this version of the deck a lot more than the old ones, I feel like. Because the old ones just felt like Pirate Warrior. This one feels like a mid-rangey.
It's its own thing.
Yeah, right? It feels like a tempo warrior, which is what I always imagined Galakron Warrior to be. But yeah, so if you guys are interested in any of these lists, I know for those of you guys that are listening to the episode, whether it's on podcast or you just kind of have us on in the background if you're watching the YouTube channel, I know we didn't go through all these lists card by card, so if you guys want to see any of them or grab codes, just make sure you guys click the link down in the comments below. So if you click show more, there'll be a link to see all the deck lists. Make sure you guys just click that. But that'll be it. That's going to be our episode tonight. We're going to keep analyzing the meta, see how it changes, how it shifts over the next few weeks. And we're going to be doing State of the Wild episodes every Sunday. So if you guys enjoy these episodes, make sure you guys drop a subscription so that you guys know when the new videos go live. And just a reminder that we're on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, all that kind of good stuff. So if you'd like to listen on the go, make sure you guys check us out there. Corbett, thank you again for joining me. Let the people know where they can find you.
Guys, you can find me at CorbettGames on Twitter and Twitch, and you can also hit up my YouTube at either CorbettGames there or Corbett Daily. We have 2 different channels going on. So, yep. Thank you again, Meowth. I hope you had a great one today as well. Thank you for having me on again.
Yeah, we appreciate all of you guys for watching as well. We hope you all enjoyed. Stay safe out there. We hope you're enjoying the new expansion, and we will see you guys next time. Later.
Bye.